Hi, welcome back to Year of the Book, where we're documenting our writing journey and all the bumps along the way. I'm Lucy and I have been on holiday and I feel like I've forgotten how to film because I pre-filmed before I went away. So it's been a few weeks and now I'm like, how do I do this? So I thought, well, let's get back into it. Let's ease back into filming with a little holiday book haul. So I have been to Scotland, very nice by the way, and I bought a couple of books whilst I was there, so let's see what I got. So in a remarkable turn of events, these are all actually new books because we managed to go a whole week without going to a charity shop, a secondhand bookstore or a book exchange, which is something of a miracle because it's something that we do a lot and that's where a lot of my books come from, but that didn't happen. So these are all new ones and they're just books that I picked up in different places that I kind of liked the look of. So the first one I've got here is called The Old Ways. It's by a writer called Robert Macfarlane. Now I think he is a professor of literature, but he's a nature writer. Now I have been seeing his books freaking everywhere for the past couple of years, in lots of different places. The one I've seen most is called Is a River Alive, I think it's called. But I haven't actually read any of his books before. It's kind of been on my radar and I've kind of been interested in them. And this one is called The Old Ways, and it is basically about different kind of paths and walkways, like ways that are walked across the British Isles and beyond, according to the blurb. Now I was interested in this because firstly, I am a bit interested in folk horror as a genre, and place-based horror and stories that are connected to land, that reflect on our relationship with the land, how people relate to land and relate to place. I find that interesting in both the sort of fiction and as a reader, but also from a sort of analytical perspective as an academic, I guess. But I also find it interesting from a personal perspective, and it's something that I've thought more about since I moved back to the UK a couple of years ago. So I lived abroad for 10 years before that, and at the time when I left the UK, it was just after Brexit, and I felt very disconnected from the country and very detached from essentially the place that I grew up in. I didn't feel any sort of sense of connection to it at all. And there was a point where I felt like I wanted to move back, but I still felt, perhaps even more, having then lived abroad for quite a long time, that sense of detachment. I learned a little bit more about like concepts of place and land and connections to land, and I started to think, well, what does this mean to me in like a very personal sense, and what are the stories and the lands of the place that I live in, right? And I started to find that a bit more interesting, not in like a sort of national identity way. I'm not really interested in that at all, but I am interested in the concept of place, of paths. Like, I love the idea of different types of paths, and there's a certain type of path that he talks about in the second chapter, which are called, I think he calls them like desire paths or desire lines. So it's where there is a footpath somewhere, right, or a pavement or a road or whatever, but at some point different people and other animals have taken like a little shortcut across the grass or like through some shrubs, and over time, like, people or animals coming and going has worn through this additional path that's like a little bit quicker, a little bit preferred. And I've always found those fascinating. Sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent here. Always found those fascinating, and it talks about things like that. And it's also going to talk about kind of stories that come with those paths and with those ways. And I found that really interesting to learn more about this in a British context. And I think that hopefully it might provide some kind of sources of inspiration or reflection for my writing as well. I would love to engage a bit more with folk horror or kind of land and place-based tales. So I'm hoping it might inspire me in that sense as well. I have started it already, but I'm only kind of 25 pages in. So next up, this is called These Are Monsters, and this is a collection of 8 short stories that are contemporary retellings of sort of folk fairy type tales. And again, it's land and place based. So this book is published by English Heritage. I picked it up at Hadrian's Wall, and the 8 stories are all inspired by different sites that English Heritage manage. So if you don't know what English Heritage is, if you're outside England or the UK. So English Heritage is, I mean, it's a charitable organisation, but they basically own and or manage lots of ancient sites in England. So places like Hadrian's Wall, for example, different sort of ruin sites, castles, things like that. So they have, I think, 400 different sites in England. Maybe they're in Wales as well. I don't know. And then there's like a Scottish equivalent of it. So anyway, these 8 stories are all inspired by different sites that they run. So that's why it's published by them. And they are contemporary retellings of some of these classic tales. Haven't started this yet. I did have a quick flick through it in the shop, and that was enough to make me want to buy it, basically. Next up, we've got 12 Words for Moss by Elizabeth Jane Burnett. Is that the right? Yes, that is her name. I keep wanting to say Elizabeth Moss. Not Elizabeth Moss. 12 Words for Moss by Elizabeth Jane Burnett. So I picked this up at a Botanic Garden shop, and I did pick it up because I quite like moss. I am quite interested in it. I think it's a very interesting plant. It's very ancient plant, one of the oldest kind of forms of life as far as I'm aware. I like how it looks. I like how it feels. And I also read previously a book called Gathering Moss by Robin Wall Kimmerer, or rather I listened to the audiobook of it, which she reads, and I really liked that. So this botanical garden that we went to had a moss garden, which I was very excited about. And then they had a really cool selection of books about like moss and lichen, and I really appreciated that. So that's why I picked it up, and I thought it was going to be purely about moss, but I now find out that it's not. But that's okay. It kind of sounds even more interesting. So it's described on the back as a bittersweet travel log come nature memoir, and it's the author's journey through grief after the death of her father. And it sounds like it's kind of mixing genres here, because it has poems about different species of moss, and then it has chapters and reflections from different places that she's travelled to as well through her journey of grief. So that sounds really interesting. I kind of like that it's not one single thing. I think that is cool. So I'm really interested to get into that. Before I bought it, I did have a quick Google, and it got really good reviews. So I am excited to read this one as well. So that's it, just 3 books. That was enough from my week-long holiday. Let me know if you've read any of these books. I would love to know what you think of them. And I'm a bit surprised at myself, actually, because you might have heard me say in previous videos that I don't read a lot of non-fiction outside of work. But actually, I feel like I'm in a bit of a non-fiction groove at the moment. I just finished a memoir. I've got a couple of non-fictions on my bedside table at the moment, and then 2 out of these 3 books are also non-fiction. So I'm not really sure what's going on, but I'm enjoying it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!